The Galactic Council chamber was enormous. 3 kilometers of polished crystal floors that reflected lights from 1,000 different worlds. Every species in the known galaxy had representatives here, and today they were all gathered for the same reason they gathered every year: to bring gifts to Emperor Vexthal the Magnificent. The Emperor was terrifying to look at. He stood 40 feet tall, a massive dragon-like creature covered in black scales that seemed to swallow light itself. His eyes glowed like dying stars, ancient and cold. For 800 years, he had ruled the Drakthor Empire with absolute power. For 800 years, every species had brought in their finest treasures, hoping to win his favor and keep the peace. And for 800 years, he had rejected every single gift. Ambassador Kong Jiho stood near the back of the crowd, nervously clutching a golden disc in his sweaty hands. He was young for an ambassador, barely 30 years old, and he had been given Earth's most important mission: present humanity's gift to the Emperor and pray he accepted it. If the Emperor rejected their gift, Earth would lose its protection. Humanity would be alone in a dangerous galaxy. Jiho watched as one species after another approached the Emperor with their offerings. The Centaurian collective came first, their bodies made of living crystal. They presented memory cubes containing their entire civilization's history, every thought, every discovery, every beautiful moment they had ever experienced. The cubes glowed with inner light, priceless beyond measure. Emperor Vexthal reached out one massive claw and took the cube. He examined it with senses that humans couldn't understand, perceiving dimensions beyond normal space. The chamber held its breath. "Insufficient," the Emperor said, his voice like grinding stone. "The Drakthor require nothing you possess." The cube clattered to the crystal floor. The Centaurians bowed their heads and retreated. Next came the Silicon Hive, a collective consciousness that spanned 17 star systems. They offered a mathematical proof so elegant it could describe the birth and death of entire universes in a single equation. They had carved it into quantum crystal that would last until the heat death of a universe itself. The Emperor's inner eyelids flickered, the closest thing to interest anyone had seen in decades. "Insufficient. The Drakthor require nothing you possess." The pattern continued. The Void Dwellers brought compressed starlight, beautiful and impossible. Rejected. The Harmonic Singers offer song that could reshape atoms with sound. Rejected. The ancient archives presented texts from civilizations that had died before humans even discovered fire. Rejected. Every gift was more magnificent than the last. Every rejection was identical. Jiho felt sick to his stomach. His hands trembled as he held the golden disc tighter. It was called Eternal Record, and it contained everything that made humanity human. Every song ever written, every book ever published, every piece of art ever created, every language ever spoken. 5 years of work had gone into compiling it. It was the last complete copy in existence. It was also worthless by galactic standards. Humanity had almost nothing of value. 20 years ago, their sun had nearly collapsed in an event called the solar collapse. Billions had died. Only intervention from the Galactic Council had saved them. Their technology was primitive, their resources exhausted. All they had left was their culture, their soul, contained on a single golden disc. "Ambassador Kong Jiho of Earth," the herald announced. "Present your tribute." Jiho walked forward on shaking legs. Each footstep echoed in the vast chamber. 3,000 diplomats from 500 worlds watched him. Some looked pitying. Some looked calculating, like predators watching wounded prey. He reached the platform and held up the disc. His prepared speech came out in a voice he barely recognized as his own. "Emperor Vexthal, humanity presents eternal record. Within this disc is everything we are, our history, our art, our music, our dreams. We offer you our cultural soul and gratitude for saving our species from extinction. We have nothing more valuable to give." The Emperor leaned down. His massive head descended until one eye, larger than Jiho's entire body, examined the disc. Complex patterns flickered in those glowing depths as he perceived things Jiho couldn't imagine. Vexthal straightened slowly. When he spoke, his voice was not cruel, but it was final. "Your species offers its cultural soul," he said. "Admirable desperation." Geo's heart sank into his stomach. Insufficient. The Drakthor require nothing you possess. The disc fell from the Emperor's claw. Geo caught it on instinct, cradling humanity's entire heritage in his arms. Around him, whispers filled the chamber, some sympathetic, most simply noting another rejection in the long history of rejections. Earth's conditional membership is hereby suspended, the herald began, as per council regulations. The massive doors at the far end of the chamber burst open with a thunderous boom. Every eye in the chamber, every sensory organ of 500 different species, turned toward the sound. A human child stood in the doorway, tiny and alone. 3 days before the ceremony, the refugee ship Soul's Hope was dying in the darkness of space. Chief Engineer Kim Miho wiped sweat from his forehead as he stared at the failing engine readouts. He had tried everything he knew, and it wasn't enough. The starboard engine was completely destroyed. They had been limping through space on emergency power for 6 weeks now, taking the only route that avoided hostile territory, straight through Drakthor space. "How long do we have?" asked Parkyuna, stepping into the engine room. She was only 24 years old, far too young to be responsible for 200 orphan children. But the solar collapse that had nearly destroyed Earth's sun 3 years ago hadn't cared about age when it killed people. It had taken her parents, her siblings, everyone. Now she was all these children had left. Miho didn't look at her when he answered. 12 hours. Maybe less. The containment fields are breaking down. When they fail completely, the reactor will explode. Yuna closed her eyes and took a slow breath. Can we reach the nearest station? We're 18 hours away from anywhere with people. Behind them, in the cargo hold that had been converted into a dormitory, 200 children slept in suspended animation pods. Only the youngest ones were awake. 12 children too small for the pods to work properly. They played quietly in a corner, supervised by the 2 other surviving adults. Lee Jiho, a former teacher, and Choi Min-soo, a doctor. One little girl sat apart from the others. Her name was Hannah, and she was 8 years old. She had been drawing the same picture for 3 days, a large black shape with wings that the other children said looked like a dragon. "What are you making?" asked Park Sora, a 6-year-old girl who came over to look. "A thank you card," Hannah said seriously, still coloring carefully. "For when someone saves us." Sora frowned. "But nobody knows we need help. Nobody's coming." "Then I'll save it for when they do," Hannah replied, as if this made perfect sense. In the cockpit, Miho was preparing to send out a final distress signal when suddenly the proximity alarm started screaming. "Ships!" Yuna gasped, staring at the scanner screen. 3 of them, really big ones. Miho's fingers flew over the controls, pulling up identification codes. His face went white. "Drakthor military vessels," he whispered. "Dreadnought-class warships." Everyone in the galaxy knew what that meant. The Drakthor weren't cruel, but they were cold and territorial. They protected their borders with absolute precision. They didn't rescue strangers. They didn't help refugees. And Soul's Hope had been drifting through their space for 6 weeks without permission. "They're trying to contact us," Yuna said, her voice shaking. Miho opened the communication channel, preparing to beg for mercy for the children at least, even if the adults had to be punished for trespassing. The face that appeared on the screen surprised him. It wasn't a Drakthor. It was another human, a young woman in a military uniform. "Refugee Vessel Soul's Hope. This is Captain Lee Salmon of the Earth Embassy Ship Horizon. We're working with the Drakthor fleet. Don't be afraid. You're being rescued." "Rescued?" Miho repeated, not believing his ears. "By direct order of Emperor Vextal himself," the captain said, and she sounded as shocked as Miho felt. "He's authorized medical facilities, supplies, and a full military escort to get you safely to Earth Embassy territory. We honestly don't know why he's doing this. The Drakthor never do things like this. But we're not going to argue." Behind Miho, the children had woken up and crowded into the cockpit. Hannah pushed her way to the front, still holding her drawing. "Did she say we're being saved?" Hannah asked. "Yes," Yuna said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, we're being saved." Hannah looked down at her drawing of the black dragon with its crooked smile. "I knew it," she said quietly. "I knew someone good would come." The rescue took 6 hours. Drakthor medical personnel, moving with surprising gentleness for such large beings, transferred all 200 children to an orbital station. The medical facilities were more advanced than anything Earth had. Healing pods that could repair radiation damage in hours, food machines that could make anything the children needed, rooms that adjusted gravity and air for perfect comfort. Hannah was placed in a healing pod for the burns on her arms from the ship's failing systems. When she woke 12 hours later, the scars had faded to thin lines. A Drakthor medical officer was checking her vital signs with strange glowing instruments. "Where are my friends?" Hannah asked immediately. "Safe." The officer replied through a translation device. "All children are well and healthy." "Where's my drawing?" The officer paused, confused. "Your drawing?" "My thank you card. For the Emperor. He saved us, so I need to thank him. My mom always said you have to say thank you when someone helps you." Hannah's voice got quieter. "She's dead now, but she'd be really mad if I didn't follow the rules." The officer didn't know what to say. Finally, they showed Hannah where her belongings had been stored, including the wrinkled thank you card. Over the next 3 days, the children recovered. The adults tried to figure out what would happen next. There was talk of paperwork, medical clearances, diplomatic protocols. Hannah listened to all this during meals. On the 3rd day, she learned something interesting. There was a big ceremony happening where important people from every planet brought gifts to the Emperor. "What kind of gifts?" Hannah asked Teacher Jiho. "Very expensive ones," he said tiredly. "Treasures and technology we can't even imagine." Hannah looked at her wrinkled card. "Do you think he'll like this?" Jiho smiled sadly. "It's beautiful, Hannah, but the Emperor isn't like us. He doesn't care about things like drawings." "He cared enough to save us," Hannah pointed out. Jiho had no answer for that. That night, while the adults slept, Hannah slipped away. She had been watching the guards, learning their patterns. She was small and quiet and determined. By the time anyone noticed she was missing, Hannah was already hidden in a cargo container being loaded onto a transport heading to the Galactic Council chamber. She held her thank you card tight and waited. Her mother had taught her to always say thank you, to always acknowledge kindness, to always see the good in people even when they seemed scary, even when they were 40-foot-tall dragon emperors. The guards were rushing toward the small human child, but Emperor Vexthal raised one massive claw. The gesture was simple, but it carried absolute authority. Every guard froze in place immediately. "Leave her," the Emperor said, his glowing eyes fixed on the wrinkled piece of paper in his palm. Ambassador Kong Geo felt like his brain had stopped working. This was impossible. In 800 years, the Emperor had never shown interest in any gift. He had certainly never stopped his guards from removing an intruder, and now he was carefully, almost gently, examining a child's crayon drawing. "Your name is Hannah?" Vexthal asked, lowering his enormous head until he was at eye level with the tiny girl. "Yes, Your Majesty," Hannah said. Then she added quickly, "I'm sorry I interrupted. The guards tried to stop me, but I really needed to give you the card. I didn't get a thank you before, and my mom always said," her voice caught for a moment, "my mom always said you have to thank people who help you." Something changed in the Emperor's expression. Most of the assembled diplomats couldn't read Drakthor facial features, but Ambassador Geo thought it looked like pain. "Your mother was very wise," the Emperor said softly. "She died in the solar collapse," Hannah said with the strange calmness of a child who had lived with grief for years. "So did my dad and my brother Juno. But before she died, she made sure I got on an evacuation ship. She told me I had to survive and be kind to people, because kindness is the only thing that survives when everything else ends." The massive chamber fell completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop from a kilometer away. Vexthal slowly rose to his full height, still holding the drawing as if it were made of glass. When he spoke, his voice carried every corner of the vast space. "For 800 years, I have stood in this chamber and rejected tribute. Do you know why?" Nobody answered. Nobody dared to breathe. Because every gift brought to me was offered to buy something, to purchase favor, to gain advantage, to buy peace with treasures, to secure alliances with wonders. His eyes swept across all the assembled diplomats. Your gifts were transactions, calculations, business deals dressed up as respect. You gave me things to get things in return. He held up Hannah's drawing for everyone to see. This child brings me paper and crayons and clumsy art. She brings it because she wants to say thank you, not to buy my favor, not to purchase protection for her species, not to secure Earth's place in the council. His voice became softer. She brings it because she saw what I did, a simple rescue of a dying ship. And she calls it heroism. She drew me smiling. The Emperor's claw trembled slightly as he looked at the drawing again. In 800 years, nobody has drawn me smiling. In 800 years, nobody has called me good. He looked down at Hannah, who was watching him with confused eyes. In 800 years, nobody has seen me as anything except a necessary evil to be kept happy, a tyrant to be appeased with gifts, a monster to be feared and avoided. But you're not a monster, Hannah said, sounding puzzled. Monsters don't save people. You saved all of us, all 200 kids on our ship. You sent doctors and food and medicine and everything. That's what heroes do. The Emperor closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they looked different somehow, warmer, though they still contained the light of dying stars. I rejected every gift because I wanted to know if anyone would offer me something that wasn't calculated, something that wasn't strategic, something that saw me as more than just the Emperor, more than the power I control, more than the fear I create. His voice cracked slightly. I want to know if anyone could see me as a person. He looked at the crude drawing again. And for 800 years, nobody did, until a human child with paper and crayons showed me what I'd forgotten I could be. Vexthal turned to face the entire assembly, his voice ringing with power and authority. I accept this gift. This crude thank you card from the human child named Hannah. I accept it, and I declare the most valuable treasure the Drakthor Empire has ever received. The chamber exploded with noise. Diplomats were shouting. Translation devices were overloading with too much input, and somewhere in the Chaos Ambassador Geo dropped a golden disc containing all of human culture. He didn't even notice. He was too busy staring at the little girl who had just accidentally saved humanity. Furthermore, Vexthal continued, his voice cutting to the noise like a blade, I hereby declare the following. Earth's conditional membership is not simply renewed. It is made permanent and complete. Humanity is granted all rights and privileges of full council membership, effective immediately. Geo's legs almost gave out beneath him. Additionally, the Emperor said, I establish what I will call the Hannah Protocol. Any refugee ship entering Drakthor space in distress will receive immediate help. No questions asked. No payment required. No transactions needed. Because this is what good people do, as I've been reminded today. The Emperor carefully, precisely folded the drawing and placed it in a dimensional storage pocket that existed beyond normal space, where it would be preserved perfectly forever. And finally, Vexthal said, looking directly at Hannah, I declare that every child from the ship Soul's Hope is granted citizenship in the Drakthor Empire if they want it. They will receive education, protection, and every opportunity to build good lives. Because 800 years ago, I forgot what it meant to protect those who cannot protect themselves. I forgot what it meant to show mercy not because it benefits me, but because it is simply the right thing to do. He leaned down once more to Hannah's level. Thank you for reminding me that power without kindness is just cruelty in disguise. Thank you for seeing what I had forgotten I could be. Thank you for your crude, beautiful, perfect gift. Hannah smiled, the first real, happy smile she had shown since the solar collapse killed her family. You're welcome, she said. Can I hug you? In Drakthor culture, touching the Emperor without permission was punishable by death. The guards tensed, hands moving toward weapons. Vexthal slowly, carefully, lowered one claw to the ground beside Hannah. It was as large as her entire body. Please, he said quietly. Hannah wrapped her small arms around the single talon, squeezing as hard as she could. The image would be transmitted across the entire galaxy within hours. A human child hugged and clawed the most powerful being in known space, while the Emperor's ancient eyes closed in an expression that looked remarkably like peace. The news traveled faster than light itself across the galaxy. Within hours, every news channel on every planet was showing the same story. Dragon Emperor accepts gift for first time in 800 years from human child. The image of little Hannah hugging the Emperor's massive claw became the most shared photograph in galactic history. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds saw it and couldn't believe their eyes. Within days, things started to change. At the Drakthor Imperial Palace, Emperor Vexthal made his first public address in 200 years. Billions watched as the ancient dragon appeared on their screens. "I have been reminded of something important," he said to his people. "Power without compassion creates only fear, and fear without hope creates only hate. I have ruled with strength for 800 years. Now I will also rule with mercy." The first new law was a Hannah Protocol, officially written into Drakthor law. Any refugee ship from any species would receive immediate help in Drakthor space. No payment required. No questions asked. No obligations created. The second law created the Imperial Orphan Protection Act. Every orphan child in Drakthor territory would receive guaranteed education, housing, and medical care until they became adults. The third law changed how diplomacy worked. The traditional gift-giving ceremony was ended. Instead, the emperor would hold an annual day of gratitude, where anyone, diplomat or child, rich or poor, could offer thanks if they wished. Nobody had to. Nobody would be judged. It was simply an opportunity. The galaxy watched in shock as the most rigid, formal empire in known space transformed seemingly overnight. But the real transformation was happening in a much smaller place. On the medical station, Hannah had become famous. The other children from Soul's Hope didn't fully understand what had happened, but they knew Hannah had done something important, something that meant they were all safe now. Park Yuna, the head caretaker, found Hannah in the art room 3 days after the ceremony. The girl was drawing again, another dragon, this time surrounded by other dragons. A dragon family. "How are you feeling?" Yuna asked, sitting beside her. "Confused," Hannah admitted, carefully coloring scales. "Everyone keeps saying I did something amazing, but I just gave him a thank you card. That's normal, right? When someone helps you, you say, thank you." Yuna smiled sadly. "It should be normal. But sometimes people forget the simple things." The emperor said he'd been waiting 800 years for someone to thank him. Hannah said quietly, "That's really, really sad. Everyone should be thanked when they do nice things. You're a very wise little girl." "My mom was wise. I'm just trying to remember what she taught me." A sound at the door made them look up. Yuna stood quickly, expecting a medical officer. Instead, Emperor Vexthal stood there, or rather, a projection of him. Scaled down to only 8 feet tall instead of 40, small enough to fit through normal doors. But his eyes were the same. Yuna immediately bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, we didn't know you were coming." "Peace," Vexthal said gently. "I wish to speak with Hannah, if she is willing." Hannah looked up from her drawing. "Hi, do you want to see my new picture? It's a dragon family. I thought you might be lonely, so I drew you some friends." The emperor's expression flickered with that same look of surprise and pain from the ceremony. "I would be honored to see it," he said. Hannah held up the drawing proudly. "This big one is you, and these are other dragons around you. I don't know if you have friends or family, but everyone should have people who care about them, so I drew you some." Vexthal was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful, as if he was trying not to show too much emotion. "I have advisors. I have ministers and generals and a whole government. I have an empire." He paused. "I have not had friends in a very, very long time." "Why not?" Hannah asked with typical child bluntness. "Because when you are powerful, people fear you, and fear makes real friendship impossible. I'm not afraid of you. I know. That is exactly why your gift was so precious to me." Hannah thought about this. "Would you like to be friends? I'm only 8, so I'm probably not a very good friend for an emperor, but I could try." The projection flickered slightly, as if the Emperor's emotional control had slipped enough to affect the technology, creating his image. "I would like that very much," he said finally. "Okay, friends write letters to each other. My mom used to write letters to my grandmother on Mars before the collapse. She said letters are special because you have to think about the person while you're writing. Can emperors write letters?" "I suppose they can." "Then I'll write you letters about what's happening with us kids, and you can write back about emperor things. That way we can be friends even when you're busy." Hannah paused. "But I should tell you, my handwriting is still pretty messy, and I don't spell everything right yet. Teacher Jiho says I'm getting better, though." "I will treasure every misspelled word," Vexthal said, and he meant it with an intensity that made Yuna's eyes fill with tears. The Emperor's visits became regular. Once a week, his projection would appear at the medical station. He and Hannah would talk about small, normal things. How her lessons were going, what the other children were doing, what she was drawing. Sometimes other children gathered the courage to join. Little Park Sora asked if dragons could breathe fire. They couldn't, but they could control plasma fields. Kim Juno asked if being an emperor was fun. It wasn't, but it was necessary. Lee Mina asked if he would really let them become Drakthor citizens. He would, absolutely. For the first time in centuries, Emperor Vexthal spent time with people who wanted nothing from him except his company and conversation. It changed him in ways he hadn't expected. The imperial court noticed. Advisors whispered that the emperor was different now, more patient, more thoughtful. Where he once ruled with cold efficiency, he now asked different questions. How will this affect families? What about the children? Is this kind or just convenient? Not everyone approved. Some conservatives muttered that the emperor was becoming weak, that emotion was clouding his judgment. They changed their minds when raiders attacked a border colony. The old Vexthal would have responded with calculated force, enough to stop future attacks, nothing more. The new Vexthal personally led the defense fleet. The battle lasted 3 hours. The raiders never attacked Drakthor space again. But then the Emperor did something unprecedented. He stayed for a week to help rebuild. He authorized resources for trauma counseling. He visited every injured child personally, making sure they knew they were safe. One little Drakthor girl, about Hannah's age, gave him a drawing she'd made, a crude picture of a dragon protecting a city. Vexthal accepted it with the same reverence he'd shown Hannah's gift. He was learning what it meant to be the person Hannah had seen when she drew him smiling. 10 years after the ceremony that changed the galaxy, Hannah stood in the embassy wing of the Drakthor Imperial Palace, adjusting her diplomatic uniform for the 3rd time. She was 18 now, no longer the small orphan girl who had interrupted the most important ceremony in the galaxy with a crayon drawing. "You look fine," said Ambassador Kongjio, the same man who had witnessed her childhood gift. He was older now, with gray in his hair, and had become Earth's senior diplomatic advisor. Over the years, he had also become Hannah's mentor. "Stop fidgeting. I'm about to give a speech to the entire Galactic Council," Hannah said, her hands shaking slightly. "I think being nervous is normal." "You gave a speech to an emperor when you were 8, Jiho pointed out with a slight smile. "And you weren't even trying. This should be easy." "That was different. I didn't know I was doing anything important back then. Now I know what's at stake." Hannah looked at herself in the mirror one more time. She barely recognized a confident young woman staring back at her. 10 years was a long time. The scared little orphan from Soul's Hope had grown into someone different. She had been educated in both human and Drakthor schools. She spoke 4 languages fluently. She had studied diplomacy, history, and interspecies relations. And through it all, she had kept writing letters to Emperor Vexthal. Hundreds of letters over 10 years. Sometimes about important things, often about small, everyday moments. And he had written back every single time. "He'll be there," Jiho said, reading her thoughts. "He wouldn't miss this." Hannah nodded. She knew that. Emperor Vexthal had personally requested that she be the one to present the 10-year report on the Hannah Protocol, the refugee assistance program that now operated across 17 different empires and had saved over 2 million lives. The walk to the council chamber felt both too long and too short. When the massive crystal doors opened, Hannah saw the same room where everything had changed a decade ago. It looked exactly the same, but everything was different. The chamber was full. Representatives from every member species sat in their designated areas. And at the center, on his raised platform, Emperor Vexthal waited. He looked exactly as Hannah remembered, massive, powerful, ancient. But when their eyes met, she saw the warmth there that nobody else had seen until 10 years ago. Junior Ambassador Hannah of Earth, the herald announced, presenting the 10-year assessment of the Hannah Protocol. Hannah walked to the center platform, her footsteps echoing. She had practiced this speech 100 times, but now that she was here, the prepared words felt wrong. She looked up at Emperor Vexthal, and suddenly she was 8 years old again, holding a crude drawing and wanted to say thank you. She set aside her prepared notes. 10 years ago, I was a scared orphan on a dying ship, she began, speaking from her heart instead of her script. I had lost my family. I had lost my home. I had lost almost everything that mattered. And then Emperor Vexthal saved us. All 200 of us children, when he had no obligation to do so. The chamber was completely silent. I gave him a thank you card because my mother taught me that kindness should always be acknowledged. I had no idea that simple act would change anything, but it did. Hannah looked around at all the assembled diplomats. It changed everything because it reminded us all of something we had forgotten. That power should serve compassion, not replace it. That strength means nothing without mercy. That the purpose of civilization isn't just survival. It's caring for those who cannot care for themselves. She pulled out a folder containing reports, statistics, and data. In 10 years, the Hannah Protocol has been adopted by 17 empires and 43 independent systems. It has provided emergency assistance to over 2 million refugees. It has saved approximately 847,000 lives that would have been lost without intervention. But more than that, it has changed how we think about our responsibilities to each other. Hannah held up a piece of paper, not the official report, but something else, something old and wrinkled, preserved in a protective covering. This is a copy of the original thank you card I gave the Emperor. The real one is in his private chambers, where he has kept it for 10 years. I look at this copy sometimes, and I remember what it taught me, that the smallest gesture, offered with genuine heart, can be more powerful than the greatest treasure offered for gain. She looked directly at Vexthal again. Your Majesty, you saved my life 10 years ago. But more than that, you taught me that even the most powerful beings in the universe can choose kindness. You showed me that it's never too late to remember what it means to be good. And you proved that one person's choice to act with mercy can inspire millions of others to do the same. Hannah's voice grew stronger. The Hannah Protocol isn't just a policy. It's a reminder that we are all capable of being better than we were, that we can choose compassion over calculation, that we can build a galaxy where power serves protection, where strength creates safety, where fear is replaced with hope. She bowed deeply, first to the Emperor, then to the assembled council. Thank you for letting a scared child teach you something you already knew but had forgotten. Thank you for choosing to remember. And thank you for proving that change is always possible, no matter how long we've been doing things the wrong way. The chamber erupted in applause. But Hannah only watched Emperor Vexthal. The ancient dragon rose from his platform and descended to the main floor, something he had never done before in council chambers. He approached Hannah, and the entire galaxy watched as he carefully, gently extended one claw. Hannah took it without hesitation, her small hand wrapping around the massive talon. You have become exactly who I knew you would be, Vexthal said quietly, though his voice carried through the chamber. Strong, wise, and kind. Your mother will be very proud. I learned from the best, Hannah replied, tears in her eyes. A dragon emperor who remembered how to be a hero. Later, in the private gardens of the Imperial Palace, Hannah and Vexthal walked together as they had done countless times over the years. What will you do now? The Emperor asked. Continue the work, Hannah said simply. There are still refugees who need help. Still systems that haven't adopted the protocol. Still people who need to be reminded that kindness matters. You carry your mother's legacy well. I carry yours too, Hannah said, looking up at him. You taught me that it's never too late to change. That power should protect, not harm. That even after 800 years of doing things one way, you can choose to do better. Vexthal was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his dimensional pocket and pulled out the original thank you card, still perfectly preserved after 10 years. This crude piece of paper changed my empire, he said softly. It changed me. A child's drawing with crooked letters and a sun sticker reminded me that I could be more than I was. He looked at Hannah with those ancient, glowing eyes. Thank you for seeing the person I wanted to be, and for believing I could become him. Thank you for proving me right. Hannah replied. The end.